welcome back to Remake Hot Take, the podcast where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Marriya Schwarz.
And I'm Brooke Rees, and this week we are doing Forrest Gump, which apparently is one of Marriya's favorites. She said that she will watch it like 5 times in a row before going to a Bubba Gump, just in case.
Just in case.
There's any trivia opportunities.
They only give mints, and I'm allergic, but it's more the prestige.
Since when are you allergic? Like, are you allergic to all mint? Like mint extract?
They just kind of make my throat close up, just like slightly.
Okay, so just like a touch of like anaphylaxis.
Just like a little healthy dose.
Yeah, like the perfect end to a meal. You know,
Exactly.
you're done eating, so you don't need the throat anymore.
Exactly. I'm actually that main couple from Phantom Thread, where we just give a little bit of poison. But yeah, so you didn't know me in my Forrest Gump period. So you'll be meeting her tonight. But it is the 30th anniversary of Forrest Gump, which is also great because that's why it was free on Pluto TV, so I didn't have to pay money for it. So, hooray.
I watched it on my parents' Paramount Plus account.
Ooh, she fancy. Paramount Plus. So should we dive into it?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Should we do history first?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so what's your history? Let's get you out of the way.
Mine is much less exciting. Okay, so this movie came out in 1994. I don't know. I think this was a movie that I never sought out. It was always one that was on TV.
It's
like
just on, yeah.
It's like I feel like at this very moment, I know that no one has cable anymore, but like at this very moment, if you are, you know, at your grandma's house or something, you could turn on the TV and like I bet you like at least $25 that Forrest Gump would be playing on at least one channel.
It's like the middle. Like no one seeks out to watch the middle, but everyone has watched the
middle. King of Queens. Like it's always available. It's always there in the background. So it was a movie that I think I initially, when I was younger, would walk in on like my mom, usually my mom watching it, and would come in at like various parts. And then I don't know, probably when I was like 10 or so, finally sat down and like watched the entire thing intentionally. But very good movie, like definitely kind of a comfort film. Wasn't super heavily in my like rotation of movies, but I think that's honestly maybe one of my first Tom Hanks films too. And I thought he was just kind of like that. Like he was doing a fantastic job acting. So I was like, oh, this is, you know, diversity. They got a man with an intellectual disability. I was like, wow, they're really representing here. So that tells you how good Tom Hanks was doing. But yeah, I think that was probably like my first Tom Hanks film, and then followed by Polar Express, which was a huge part of
You
my
didn't do
childhood.
Toy Story?
Yeah, I did Toy Story, but like I guess physically like seeing his face in
Polar Express.
Oh, kind of. He like I feel like he kind of looks like he looks like the dad and the conductor, but no, like seeing his face in Forrest Gump and then like hearing that voice and then getting associated with that. And then yeah, Toy Story. I was never big into Toy Story. It was not one of my favorites growing up. I don't know. I think I obviously like watched it probably like a dozen times, but never went back to it.
Were you like a Sid?
No, I very much am emotionally attached to all inanimate objects. So
perfect.
it honestly it hit a little too hard for me. And I really struggled with that as a kid. I had like a touch of some sort of mental illness. But no, I was like very, and even still today, like I have a bit of like hoarding tendencies because I get like very emotionally attached to objects. So I think I watched that movie as a kid and it just like further like worsened the issue. So that's probably why I never really never really like dabbled too much in Toy Story because
Hmm.
I thought about like my dolls and like literally sobbed at the fact that I left them behind. Like, and within like recent memory, like I think I may have told the story on here of my
Of
like
Dahlia.
yeah, my childhood doll, Big Dollio. I was very creative, the naming
I'm sorry, I
process.
forgot big. It was a place of respect. I was only doing the last name.
It's Big Dollio. And like I think like 3 Christmases ago, I always bring her like back home to my parents' house for Christmas. She has her own stocking and everything. And I left her at the house 3 years ago and like it was basically like a Toy Story scene. I was like, I've abandoned her. She's underneath the bed, like by herself, wasting away.
And how's your relationship now?
We've repaired it. No, she
Good.
literally, like, I brought her, into my new apartment, obviously, and she was in like the second bedroom, just kind of chilling with all the rest of my like storage stuff. But then, like, I'm not even joking. Like 2 weeks ago, I was like, no, she needs to be here. She needs to come with me. So she's been sleeping with me the last like 2 weeks, which has been nice. So I think, we're slowly repairing our relationship. We got to, build up
Mhm.
that trust again. But yeah, so that was like probably my first like live action Tom Hanks. I was much more of like a Castaway girly. You know,
I
I
never
you
saw Castaway.
oh my God, I love first of all, I played volleyball in high school, so have that connection. And then second, I love like a little like apocalyptic disaster scenario kind of thing. So Castaway, it really like it got to
I
me because I was
mean,
like,
Vietnam.
no, but this is like, like dramatic disaster
Mm,
films that would literally never happen. That's what I want to be prepared for. I don't want to be
gotcha.
prepared for the very realistic idea of the US calling a draft and forcing us
Yeah.
to go into a war that no one wants to be in. No, I want it to be like I'm in a FedEx truck and I'm, stuck on an island and need to get my wisdom teeth out. So yeah, that was much more my like Tom Hanks film that I really gravitated towards that Tom Hanks era. And then of course just love him as an actor now. I feel like his voice is so soothing. Like I was thinking the other day that I literally hope that like if there is a heaven and I die, I want Tom Hanks to like explain to me like the bureaucratic process of what is happening as I die. Like I want him to welcome me into the afterlife, whether it's heaven or hell or anything in between. I just want Tom Hanks to be the voice that's in my head.
Mm.
So, but yeah,
Maybe
but
that's what
I,
Lieutenant Dan is gonna change his view to in heaven.
yeah, there we go. But yeah, but obviously love Forrest Gump. On this rewatch, it was, I was trying to like pay attention more. I feel like so many things happen. And in general, I feel like this is like US history person's like dream, which is probably like also why you really love it. And so I don't even like get a lot of the references. Like there are so many things that I'm sure are just hysterical that I don't quite like get or know because it's, all these historical events that they're placing him in. But I do like really love it. And it was really more so paying attention to like the emotional, like dramatic points of the film on this rewatch. But yeah, I love it. Marriya, what is your history with Forrest Gump and kind of overall feeling?
Welcome to my personality. I have my Dr. Pepper here, licensed from the film. So I think we had gone to it might have been San Francisco. I don't remember, but we were like seeing signs for Bubba Gump
Mhm.
and like the Bubba Gump Shrimp Co., which is where I'm at.
Mhm.
And um they because there's something about me is that I also really love themed restaurants.
Me too.
Because I
But
don't super like eating, and so if you can distract me with like, oh my gosh, there's an animatronic gorilla, or like, hey,
yeah.
there's a trivia contest on Forrest Gump, it'll make my dining experience much more seamless.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, I loved Rainforest Cafe. That's the thing,
mhm.
like we didn't have, did you have a Bubba Gump near you? Because I've only went
No.
to a Bubba Gump one time. I think it was on like my senior trip in high school in like Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And even then, I had only been watching Forrest Gump like a few times here and there. I was very confused as to whether Bubba Gump was like an
Mhm.
established restaurant.
Oh, you weren't going to like one that made a big deal of it?
No, like there was like some stuff, but I like, but you know how sometimes something is like prominently featured in a film that already exists and they like
Mm,
really lean into that and they have like trivia and stuff. It was like a chicken and egg situation for me. I was confused about which one came first. And I think that ties back into like me not knowing a lot of the historical references because they reference so many stuff and a lot of them obviously are like jokes. Like the Walmart logo and the shit happens slogan like he came up with. But I was like, oh, okay, then they're making fun of this Bubba Gump thing. Is that something that already exists?
mm,
And the answer is no, right? Like
mm-hmm.
it was
Yeah. So a
someone.
guy's like seafood business was dying, and so
Mm-hmm.
he decided to reach out to Paramount, I think, to like get the
By the
name
rights.
trademarked, which is I think really clever. Um, but yeah, so and also I mean I love Bubba Gump, but also Chris Pratt was discovered in a Bubba Gump, so there's wins and losses there. Um, he was working in a Bubba Gump when some film director um Ray Don Chong, who had starred in one of Pratt's favorite films, Commando, came in and offered him a role in a short movie that she was directing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, so miracles have happened there. Or not a miracle, however you
Do
feel about
we,
Chris Pratt.
yeah, do we not like Chris Pratt? Because I feel
I don't
like
know.
the
It's hot and
internet,
cold.
yeah, I feel like the internet like unfairly characterized him as like an evil person,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure he's just a Christian. And then people, it's hard to like, there are so many hateful things said on the internet about celebrities. And I feel like, on the one hand, cancel culture is good. You know, we keep people accountable. But on the other hand,
Mhm.
I feel like Gen Z, more so than any other like age group, have just taken it way too far. And
Yeah.
also, it's hard to fact check all of these things, but I'm pretty sure that people were saying that he like donated to Trump and donated to all these like racist
I
or
think
like
it was mainly
homophobic
that he goes
church.
to a church that is like very against gay people. Whether he still goes to that church, I don't know. And then a lot of it was like his relationship falling apart with Anna Faris and like that
Mm-hmm.
quick marriage and talking about his new kid with whatever her name, Schwarzenegger,
Mm-hmm.
and like talking about how this is like the most perfect baby that he's ever seen, which everyone felt like kind of like, oh, is that because your son with Anna Faris has like a learning disability and
Mm-hmm.
stuff? So I think there was a lot of that kind of stuff. So I think um maybe I don't know. So some things have been taken out of proportion. Now it's just kind of like we're reading into everything.
Yeah.
But yes, so we were in I think San Francisco and we saw signs for Bubba Gump and we were just like, oh, that seems interesting. I thought that like we just went because like Bubba Gump sounded like a funny name. But I think my parents like probably knew what the movie was.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about every Bubba Gump or most of the Bubba Gumps that I've been to, because I've been to the one in San Francisco, I've been to the one in New York multiple times. I've been to the one probably in Florida. There used to be one in Baltimore that we would go because my sister went to school in Baltimore. So it was just kind of like if we were going on a family vacation and there happened to be like a Bubba Gump around, that was somewhere that we went. But they tend to have like memorabilia from the movie. They tend to have like the bench and like the shoes right in front of it and like a little box of chocolates that you can kind of like pose with. Um, and they had so like the first time we went, I had never seen the movie. Probably my parents had, but they, had introduced to us where you get like a little sign that says like run Forrest run, and then you can flip it over to stop Forrest stop, and so that
Mm,
like explains whether you want the server to stop at your table or like
mm.
just like keep going, you're doing fine, which I feel like is also like something that should be enforced at like all restaurants. As I feel like that's like an introvert's dream, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to flag anyone down, they can just look for your sign. And so the first time we went, there was like a trivia portion. And I was eating off of the kids menu at the time, and the kids menu came with like a little like Jenny boat that had trivia from the movie. And so
Mm.
all the trivia that they were asking was all from the little boat. And so I won at trivia and I was like, this is a fantastic. That was like literally a runner's high. And I was like, we have to chase that feeling. And so then whenever I would go to any Forrest Gump, I would do like research beforehand and watch the movie so that I was ready for any question. And I remember I went um, on like a school trip in like elementary school to New York City. And we went, and then they're like, okay, you've hit all of these questions, but what's Bubba's like full name? And I was like, Benjamin Buford Blue. And they were
Mm.
like, and it was just like, again, runner's high. I got addicted to it. And so that was really exciting for me. So I just kind of kept that feeling alive. And yeah, it was just like kind of always playing on TV. So it's like it would be very rare that I would sit through the entire thing. It was like you kind of just like come and go with it. And a lot of it is I also really like Easter eggs in movies. Like
Mhm.
I eat up, not to bring back Toy Story, but like
Mhm.
time that there's like a Pizza Planet logo in the back of like a Pixar movie or anything like that. And I felt like Forrest Gump was like just full of Easter eggs, like little moments of history that I like kind of recognized and I could kind of pinpoint like, oh, there's John Lennon, there's Watergate. And I think it was a really kind of enjoyable movie to grow up with because
Mhm.
it's like more and more I understood like the jokes behind it.
Mhm.
So I think that was like something that made because I didn't even realize until watching it today, like how long it is.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't know, it's only like 30 minutes short of like Oppenheimer. And so, but it's like much more enjoyable when you're like looking for little things in each little bit. While in Oppenheimer, I was just like looking to stay awake. So that was the main goal. And then a we had gone to Savannah at one point while my sister was working in the South, and we went to like the bench where they filmed, which they don't actually I think have a bench there anymore. So we were just like looking at where he would have sat, and then there was like a Forrest Gump like bus tour that we didn't really
Mm.
take, and like it's not exactly realistic because like he doesn't actually get on the bus, he just like
Mhm.
runs. But they do have this thing where it's like kind of, I guess it's like the sites around Savannah, and then Forrest Gump is like in the back and like asking questions. And
Mhm.
then they're like, oh, actually, Forrest, your stop is here. And he gets off and runs off. So we were like looking at the bench area where he's supposed to sit. And then we just see like Forrest Gump running off into the distance. And so my dad and I just chased after him. And then we had like a conversation with this man dressed up as Forrest Gump.
Oh my
And I
God.
have a picture of it somewhere. It's also on my Facebook. But so I just, and he was just like, it was like very like, I don't know if he was like in the running for Disney World or something, but he was very in character. Um, so that was really exciting that I met Forrest. So a little meet and greet there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you know that what he was like from the bus tour? Because I would have like shit my pants. I would have been like, I would have been like, he's literally real,
Well, we saw him
guys.
jump off the bus because I think we didn't go on the bus tour, but it sounds like the like narrative of the bus tour is that like you get to a certain spot, which is like, or they basically bring you back to where he is sitting from the bench, and they're like, oh, actually, oh, Forrest, you wanted to go here. You can actually just run those blocks. And then
Mhm.
he jumps off the bus and starts running towards like an old movie theater.
Yeah.
And so we just saw him get off the bus and like saw a man dressed like this
Mm.
with like a kind of a blue checkered shirt and like a red hat. And I was like, that's him.
It's literally
And
him.
at first I was like, is Tom Hanks, like, is he in financial trouble? Like, but it was definitely like an actor, but so I thought that was really cool. So I haven't seen the movie in like a pretty long time. So it was exciting to rewatch. But yeah, now we can just kind of jump into things now that we know the lore. Brooke, first off, I wanted to ask, would you talk to Forrest Gump on a bench? Would you like engage in that conversation?
Yeah, probably. I feel like I'm someone that I don't know. I guess I have like a very like approachable aura. I think it's like I dress very like fun and like bright colors and just have like one of those faces that people like to tell me a lot of stuff. And it's happened on numerous occasions. So I feel like I'm like mentally prepared to engage in conversations with people when I don't necessarily want to. So yeah, I think I definitely would. I would definitely listen to a story. I would ask questions. I'm like an inquisitive person. I would not believe him though. I have like enough like cynicism in me that I'd be like, this man is absolutely, I'd be like, he is mentally ill. He is hallucinating. Like if I knew like all of the events that he was referencing and he was telling me that he was like met like 5 different presidents, blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, oh, this sweet little man is delusional. But yeah, I would definitely engage in conversation though and ask to hear more. But I think a part of me just wouldn't be able to believe it though. What about you? Would you engage in conversation?
I don't know. I keep on going back and forth on like I think maybe if we're in Savannah, maybe, but I think like living in like more of a city area, I'm like crazy man on bench.
Yeah.
Ignore. Like that's how I normally ignore anyone who talks to me on any kind of public transport or out in the open, especially like if he started offering me a box of chocolates, I would be like, no, absolute like poisoner, murderer. So I don't know. I mean, I would like listen in, but I wouldn't, I think I would be more like that first lady with the magazine,
Hmm.
where I'm just like, polite engagement, but also crazy man on bench. I would rather be rude than murdered, I think is what they say. Um, so yeah, it would really take a turn if Forrest Gump was a serial killer and that was like his little MO.
That's how he lured people in.
Yeah, he
Just
goes
like
by the chocolates, the poison chocolates, and then you wake up at Jenny's house, and Jenny's house is a warehouse. It's an abandoned shrimp warehouse.
oh my God. I don't think that Forrest has like a mean bone in his body
Well,
though.
that's
That
what everyone thought about like Ted Bundy, who was like limping around and needed help getting into his car.
I guess so, but I also don't think he would be able to like have he would get caught real quick.
I
Like I
don't
don't think
know.
he would be able to plan and execute
He's
anything.
a war hero, an Olympian. No one's gonna suspect him.
I guess if Jenny told him how to kill someone, he could
Yeah.
probably follow through on those plans. He
Not a smart man, but I know what murder is.
oh my gosh, he would be pleading guilty.
I'm
Um, okay, did you have any other questions or just want to talk about like favorite parts?
open to talking about anything. I have a lot of notes.
Okay.
Um, I'd wonder if Forrest would be canceled for his ties to the KKK.
I know. I was just
I
about to
totally forgot that that was like a component that his mother named him after a Ku Klux Klan leader. I also think
yeah.
it's like they don't entirely like necessarily comment. I mean, they do have that thing about Bubba's mother going from like kind of like house servant to like having a white person as her own servant
Hmm.
versus like Mama Gump, who like has her own like black servant. And we don't really comment on like that whole ideal. I kept on kind of going back and forth on like whether even the mother was like good. There's that whole scene with Forrest not getting into school because of his IQ, and then she like sleeps his way in,
Mhm.
which like girl boss. I feel like a lot of the women in this film are like using their pretty privilege kind of idea, but in kind of like toxic ways that or like femininity versus society kind of thing where it's like I hate that it's good that you're using this for your advantage, but I hate that you have to do that. And I
Mhm.
hate that, you've been brought up in this society where it's like the only way that Jenny is going to make it as a musician is if it does it fully nude and stuff like that. But I was like, you know, if Forrest needs to be in like a specialized school, maybe public education is not for him.
Mhm.
And then I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on the teacher to like keep up. But then also specialized schools aren't exactly cheap. And if they can't keep up with money and they have to keep on having these boarders, even though that they own this house, um, maybe it's not the most accessible thing. So I kept on going back and forth on like how I felt about that whole situation. But
Yeah.
please, engage.
Yeah, okay, lots of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to take notes too, because like I said, we both, think that this is a movie that every time it was on, I would only catch bits and pieces. So I was
Mhm.
trying to lay out the timeline of like every single incident that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they start, the movie off on the bench, and then the like bookends to the movie are the like feather floating through the air,
Mhm.
and then like quickly jumps into like Forrest's childhood. And I don't understand like why they did the Ku Klux Klan thing. Like obviously it was a funny bit that like Forrest has like no conceptual understanding of like what the Ku Klux Klan is, and that he thinks that they're like dressing up like ghosts, and they even make their like horses dress up like ghosts too. But like what didn't they say that the reasoning for like mama naming him that was like to remind like themselves that
That people
even
do things that are silly or
yeah, people
something, which
do
is
things
not.
that are silly. I was like, I don't know about that, Sally
Yeah.
Field. Like,
I will say that like a lot of the criticism of the movie is like we talk about a lot of specific things like racism. We talk about the war in Vietnam. We talk about, I mean, it's kind of like alluded to that Jenny dies of AIDS in the movie, which is actually different than how she dies in the book. So we kind of have all these things, but they're all kind of like passive to like the actual relationship and like character arc of Forrest. So it's
Mhm,
like we're kind of commenting on these things, but kind of superficially instead of like actually saying anything about all of these things. Like,
mhm,
what does Forrest, and I mean, it literally is cut off. Like, what does Forrest actually think about Vietnam and his friend who like I think he signed up for the war, but Bubba was drafted. And so
mhm,
like losing his friend to a war that like didn't have to happen and that kind of stuff. We never really kind of dig deep into those things. So I think that is a lot of like the criticism of like we mentioned like the KKK, but we never actually linger on it enough to make a message or to even understand fully what the filmmakers think about this.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily like mind that. I can definitely see it as a complaint, but I think much more, at the heart of this film is like a comedy. Of course, it has like its emotional and like dramatic aspects, but I think it's intentional that we don't like linger too long on those things, because from my understanding, we like are seeing things from Forrest's like point of
Mm-hmm.
view. And they establish like early on in the film that he has like a below average IQ, that his like understanding of these things is going to be like very minimal, and his understanding is like from the perspective of other people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was noticing like I guess along those same lines that like when you talk about like Forrest's character arc, like I was noticing that like a lot of the emotional labor of the film is on like the two like supporting characters of Jenny and Lieutenant Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And their stories are like very sad, very harrowing, and Forrest kind of like not like skates through life, but like things just like really work out for him in like really great ways.
Yeah.
And I think it is interesting he does have a bit of a character arc, but we are so, like, limited in our understanding of, like, the inner workings of his feelings and stuff. It's hard for us to, like, see much of that development other than, like, reading between the lines of, like, him running as being, he says, like, "You gotta put the past behind you before you can move on," and he obviously feels, like, devastated by Jenny leaving him, but it leaves, like, a lot to the imagination, right? The
Yeah.
filmmakers are never, like, explicitly telling us what Forrest is thinking, and we have to kinda infer based on his actions, for ourselves, like, what that character arc and what that development is, and what he's capable of understanding is kinda up to interpretation too.
Mhm.
But yeah, in terms of, like, the his mom sleeping with the principal, yeah, I definitely agree on that one, but, I think that, like, sending him off to, like, a different school that would be, like, better matched to his, like, abilities. I think that that would be, like, obviously the ideal, like, in the present time, we would get him, like, an IEP, like, he'd have, like, a plan. It would be, like, tailored to his needs, but I think back then, like, Mama what does she have a first name? What's her first
I've just
name?
been calling her Mama
Yeah,
Ghost.
I can't remember, but Mama, like, says that, he would kind of like the specialized school is not really gonna teach him anything. It's gonna, like, teach
Mm.
him, like, how to mow a lawn, which is, like, what he ends up
Yeah.
doing, but he kind of ends up, kind of fulfilling, like, the stereotype of what they think someone with, like, a below average IQ is capable of doing, but he
Mhm.
is mowing the lawn because he is, like, a successful multi-billionaire, like, company owner investing in Apple and just doing it because he likes to do it. So it's kind of like a slap in the face of, like, "Oh, this is what people with, like, intellectual, like, disabilities are capable of doing," but he's actually just doing it because he's so successful that he's beyond any sort of, like, work that anyone else would do.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this film has, like, so many things to, like, mull over, I feel like, but yeah, and I think, like I said, like, I think it uses its supporting characters to tell us, like, what the filmmakers think about stuff. So, it
Yeah.
uses, like, Jenny, and Jenny obviously has, like, a tragic story. Like, I think we can touch on this. You said that when you were younger, you thought that Jenny was, like, the villain in this.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
Um
growing up, I was like, "Jenny, you're pushing away this, like, great guy," and especially, like, the kind of avoidance of all of his proposals and the avoidance of his letters in the war. I just always felt like she was kind of like a bitch. But then, like, understanding that she is more like the victim of her own situation and her own trauma and her own abuse and all of that kind of stuff, and thinking about her more as like a woman who has ambition, but no one will really take her seriously,
Mhm,
I think adds like a whole level of complexity, and the idea of like Jenny is Forrest's only female friend, and, like, there's that kind of being forced into this, like, romantic role that maybe she's not comfortable in, which I think added a lot of, like, I don't know. It was just like I was like, "Jenny, you're so stupid. What are you doing?" And then just kind of realizing that, you know, growing up is realizing that, she's not the villain at all, and kind of making her more of a kind of complicated, victim of the situation, that she
mhm,
doesn't actually owe anyone necessarily anything,
mhm.
was, I think, something that changed from, like, probably my first viewing of this. Like, I
Yeah,
never even understood the whole, like, line as a kid about,
mhm,
Jenny's dad was a loving man. He touched and kissed her sisters, like, all the time.
mhm,
Didn't even really fully get that or even understood, like, the taking back of her childhood home and, like, the destruction of that.
mhm.
So I think, yeah, growing
Yeah,
up and realizing that she is much more complicated.
yeah, and I think that that's, like, another thing that the film does, right, is that, like, Forrest understanding of things is pretty like simplified and almost childlike in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And that like both of us grew up watching this movie. We kind of saw things like for face value from Forrest's perspective.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, he's a loving, he's a loving dad. He kisses and hugs them.
Mm.
And then, oh, okay, the film is
How silly
showing,
that Jenny wants to be a bird.
yeah, why does Jenny want to be a bird? And then we're like, oh, okay, maybe something is up. He, he seems a little bit angry and he's yelling, and that's kind of the extent of it. But yeah, as we have gotten older and understand like that Jenny is, I never like see her as the villain here. I think that I don't think that Forrest does either. Like I think that he doesn't understand why she does the things that that she does, but
Mhm.
he, you do see some level of like understanding of her childhood when they're going for walks, when she's come back to Greenbow with him for a little bit, and they see the house. And I think that's when like it clicks for Forrest. I think he like didn't understand it really before
Yeah.
then.
I love that he
Um
bulldozes the
I
house
know, I was gonna
afterwards.
say that too. I noticed that for the first time on this rewatch when he's sitting there and just like Forrest's like undying love for her, and he's
Mhm.
talking to her grave, like giving her an update on everything that's happened. And that's why I think that he does have like a greater understanding of,
Yeah.
what had happened. He says he bulldozed the house. But yeah, Jenny, this film really all of the things in the background to the comedy are first of all, what a tumultuous like couple decades the
Yeah.
60s, 70s, 80s, where I was like, holy cow, this was like a lot of stuff happened. And I think that like as individuals, we always think that we're like living through quote unquote unprecedented times. And of course, like our generation has lived through unprecedented times with like first black president, like what would that look like? What would a Forrest Gump now look like? First black president, COVID, Trump, like we've lived through unprecedented times as well, but it really just was like holy cow, like so many things happen um during this time period. But I think in the background of all that like tumultuous, chaotic, civil and social unrest is also themes obviously with Jenny and Lieutenant Dan of mental health struggles,
Yeah.
depression, and like drug use and addiction too.
Yeah. I think both of them as characters, and I think how they differ from Forrest is that I feel like both of them have, and I think that's kind of like the crux or the theme of the whole movie is both of them have kind of an idea of like what their fate is and what the world owes them.
Mhm,
So for Jenny, she's always wanted to like be in the spotlight, be on a stage, have people listen to her. Um, and then Lieutenant Dan, his like family legacy is to die with honor in a war.
mhm,
And I think part of that is like the contrast of Forrest, that is who is like getting to be on a stage and
mhm,
getting this honor without even really like that being his fate, without him even trying. He's just kind of going from place to place, which I think
mhm,
is what makes it really interesting. Um, and maybe that's kind of like also the symbolism of the feather, where, the feather just kind of goes from place to place wherever kind of
mhm.
the wind blows, which is kind of how Forrest has done it. Like someone will offer something and he'll just go and do it, which is, I think, really interesting.
Yeah, and that's definitely a theme and definitely the symbolism of the feather. I think they even say at one point, I think it's Lieutenant Dan that says that, like everyone has a destiny and I was supposed to, follow mine. And then I think Forrest later on in the film says that he's not sure which it is. Maybe it's like a little bit of both. I think it's when he's talking to Jenny's grave.
Mhm.
But yeah, like very good point with Jenny that she like wants to, yeah, basically just have people listen to her, and she's constantly like with these male characters, um, you know, put in positions where she's being abused and then she's falling further into addiction. And, that's something that they talk about with people who have suffered like sexual abuse and
Mhm.
physical abuse as a child. Like, are they destined to repeat those patterns of behavior, or are they destined to fall into addiction? And Jenny, to her credit, she has the moment where she, back to the bird symbolism, where, and the feather, like she wants to fly away. And unfortunately for her, that's like when she's a little kid, it means kind of like running away, hoping to find a safe place to land. But as she gets older, it's kind of the symbolism for her declining mental health and her literally like trying to commit suicide by like jumping off of a bridge or jumping off of her hotel balcony. And to her credit, she, steps down off of that ledge and she kind of forges a new path for herself and gets her life together. And even though she did, be with Forrest and then took off again and then had her kid, she does contact them. And some people have said that Jenny is like really selfish
Mm,
and that the only reason that she's contacting Forrest is like she knows that he has money, and she knows
interesting.
that she's like sick and dying, but
I feel like
don't
the
really
fact that
see
she
it.
has the scrapbook of like all of his
Mhm.
things has shown that she has paid attention the whole time. There is something that I was seeing that like because in the book she dies of hepatitis C,
Mm,
um, and they just like didn't really know much about it at the time, and so that's why she died. But in the movie, it's more that she dies of AIDS, and
mm,
so a lot of people have talked about that the movie is actually not super feminist because like the only like super sexually free character dies of AIDS, which is like sexually transmitted to her probably. So,
mm.
um there is that kind of idea. I don't know if it's necessarily obvious that it's AIDS though, or if that's what
No,
everyone
I
has just
mean,
kind of said.
hepatitis C, if they didn't have much information, that's also like a virus that can be unknown. So
Mhm.
I'm sure people are just assuming that because of the time period, but
Mm.
no, she could have also very much stuck with the book ending.
Um,
Um,
Something else that I wanted to say, just to kind of lighten it up a little bit. I think the mom really misled him on the word vacation. Um, she says, so when someone leaves and never comes back, and I'm just imagining someone is like, Forrest, I'm going to Disney World on vacation. He's like, you live there now. I just feel like she really set him up for failure.
oh no, I hope someone clued him in at like later down the road.
Well, I
Hopefully.
think that's like because he was like at one point he was like Jenny taught me how to read, and it's like thank God Jenny was there because mom was clueless. She was just making up definitions. She's like Merriam-Webster who.
She said, don't look at a dictionary. Um,
Also, do we think that Elvis made fun of a disabled child?
I
And actually, did you know that that was Austin Butler's first role?
what?
Yeah, he's actually Elvis in the movie.
Oh, no. I thought you meant Austin Butler playing Elvis. I was like, no, he definitely
Yeah,
had
he
jobs
was.
before that.
No, he was. His first role was in Forrest Gump as Elvis.
Wow, he did a
That's
great
why
job
that was actually his audition for Elvis.
for Elvis. Yeah, like 40 years later.
Yeah, I know.
He
He's
just,
still got
what's
it.
his skincare routine? He looks in his mid 20s.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it like out of all the things that I can take on a more serious level, like I didn't think that was one to really like ponder over too much because I don't think he's necessarily like making fun of. I think he was like taking inspiration at like different ways that the body can move and less making fun of, more like celebratory. I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, one thing I want to know, like, is Forrest able to like consent? Like,
That's always, I think, the question that I
that's
have.
I mean, it's always at the back of my mind. I think that like he is, but again, there's a question of like what, like, what is this childlike manner? But he seems he can like read, he can understand basic
Hmm.
concepts. Like, I think because there's not like a clear definition of like what he has, like if there's any like other
Yeah.
things that are contributing to his like delays other than like a below average IQ. But I think there are moments like, he does not know what's happening the 2 times that Jenny has, like, been in, like, a sexual situation with him.
Hmm.
Um, and, like, I don't know, it's like their relationship is obviously sweet, like, she obviously sees him much more as a friend, like, I don't think do you ever think that Jenny sees him, like, super romantically even when they get married? Because I always see it as,
I feel
like,
like it's just
a
like companionship.
yeah, I always
And
see
like
it as,
this is
like
the only man that's treated me well because he has kind of like almost this like idolization
yeah.
of her. Which, yeah, 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 that always kind of made me feel a little bit iffy, especially that part where like she shows him her boobs for the first
Mhm.
time, and like there's that whole scene, she's like, it's okay now, and stuff. I don't know. It's just like very strange. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know what to think about it fully. I didn't
Yeah.
even fully remember that scene happening.
Yeah, it gives me the ick each
Mhm,
time, and, like, even still when, like, the later scene when she's back in Greenbelt, like, I
mhm.
just get the sense that he does not know what's happening, and,
Yeah, I
I
mean, he
don't.
says, I know what love is, but it's like, I don't know. Like, so, like, verbally, he's consenting, but is love also sexual love? I don't know. Um,
No, I fully believe he knows what love is, like, he
yeah.
loves Jenny, he loves Lieutenant Dan,
Mhm.
and I
And he
think
says he'd
he's.
be a good husband and all of that kind of stuff. So he
Mhm.
understands like commitment and everything. I don't know. How would you compare it to Poor Things?
I was thinking about that, but real quick, like, I think that when he says, like, "I know what love is," it's also, like, a signal to the audience that, like, Jenny does not know what love is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she's a good friend to Forrest, but she's also not. Like, she doesn't, like, see him, I feel like, as someone, like, with his own agency. She doesn't see their relationship as anything more
Yeah.
than, like, companionship
I
and.
felt like their relationship felt a little bit like a assistance kind of like caretaker vibes
Mhm.
kind of thing. Of like the this guy has sat next to you on a bus and now suddenly you feel responsible for him, which it's not like Forrest doesn't do anything for her. So it's kind of like a give and take kind of relationship, but especially as she's growing into her own person, I
Mhm.
definitely felt like the vibe of like I kind of want Forrest just to like go away. Which like he does kind of in the war, I guess,
Yeah,
but
I think she did
that
feel that.
obligation kind of thing.
Yeah, I think she definitely felt like an obligation, and then in their early years, I did think
Mhm.
that she got the sense that he was kind of a burden and,
Mhm.
but I think when he says, like, I know what love is," it's like, "You don't, and you're letting
Yeah.
people treat you like this." Like, all of
Yeah.
her partners have treated her horribly, and that's the love that she thinks that she, like, deserves, is that kinda love, but again, like, not to, like, harp on it too much because I think it's, like, it's not, like, an important component of the film, but I don't want it to step into that area of, like, "Oh, well, he's a man, that's getting it from a woman," and we've talked about it before that I feel like anytime it's, like, a man that may be being abused or taken advantage of by a woman, like, it gets a pass because like, men always want sex, like, no matter, like, where it's from is kind of, like, the incorrect idea behind that, but yeah, I don't know. I think in the end, like, it all works out. Like, I don't think the nature of their relationship is really sexual at all, like, aside from those 2 instances. I don't think that they
Yeah.
have a sexual relationship because she's so, like, ill after their wedding, but, um, I do think that they were, in some senses, like the destiny thing, like, destined to be together. They always, like, found each other throughout, like, all those years. But yeah, in relation to Poor Things, I don't know, like, I feel like totally different. I mean, I guess similar in the fact that it's, like, someone with a childlike mind, but like we discussed in Poor Things, like, it's unclear, like, when Bella's mind begins to mature. She has, like, the aging process, like, accelerated in her physical, like, attributes, but she does eventually, like, reach, probably, like, a higher IQ than average. Like, she's very smart. She has, like, all these philosophical and ideas and reads a lot, so it's kind of like a gray area as to when that
Mm.
happened. And I like, Forrest isn't, like, seeking out sexual behavior, like, he doesn't seem
Mhm.
to have agency in these situations, which is why it, like, is kind of icky to me, whereas, like, Bella Baxter is, like, has agency, is exploring her sexuality, like, through, like, masturbation first, and then, like, very much, like, jumps at the opportunities to be with partners. And Forrest is, like, not even made aware of what's happening, and he doesn't seem to understand, like, what is happening with his body, and he doesn't seem to understand, like, how someone gets pregnant. Like, he asks if he did something wrong. Real quick, the most, like, emotional that we see Forrest get, even, like, after the death of Bubba. Like the most emotion that we see from him is when he asks, and it's like such a sad part, like it makes me tear up. It's when he asks Jenny, um, if Forrest Jr. is like him. He's like
Yeah, that's my
he's
favorite. Yeah.
terrified. It's like the only time he tears up. He's terrified that his son is gonna have the same basically difficulties in life that he does.
And I
And
think that's
that's
like kind of the first time where, everyone is like, are you stupid or something? And he's like,
mhm,
stupid is as stupid does, which is kind of deflection
mhm,
versus his actual understanding of the situation in that moment of like,
mhm,
is he like me? Did I kind of, I don't know. I think that's true for like the disabled community is like the fear of reproduction is like, am I going to pass on what I have been burdened with to someone
mhm,
else? There's always that kind of sense um, of like blame or like causing a fate or like pushing someone into a certain fate, that I thought was very true for me being part of a disabled community. But I'm not reproducing at the moment. So
yeah, yeah, definitely. Like I think we see similar themes like throughout literature, like you said, with people that have like chronic illnesses or mostly like genetic stuff that could be passed down. But yeah, it's this moment of like full realization for him, and we finally get to see like what his actual awareness is, like you said. But yeah, it's so emotional, and I'm like, oh, and she reassures him like, no, like he's really smart and he's just like so happy. But like it's interesting. I want to see like I think that his son is almost going to fall into like a caregiver role. And
yeah.
I'm always fascinated, like Forrest, there are many Forrests out there. Like there are many, many people who have like pretty like, you know, pretty severe like intellectual disabilities, like very low IQs, that do have children. And like it's fascinating to see like are they like differently abled partners? Like Jenny is someone of an average IQ. She is able to function like normally in society, but there are like people that have, relationships with where both of them are have below average IQs. And I'm like, I want to know like, okay, is his son gonna maybe take on a caregiver role later on? Like, but again, like Forrest is fully capable of living on his own. Like he has lived on his own for many years, but there is this sense that like he could get easily taken advantage of in many ways.
Mm.
And he has this innocence about him. Let's wrap it up with a few other like favorite bits or things thematic wise that we wanted to talk about, and then we got to get into our remakes here.
Yeah. Um, I just really liked the historical references, I think, here, because I think what makes this different than the last movie that we covered with Unfrosted is that Unfrosted, I mean, it's actually a pretty good parallel to this one because it covers a pretty similar time period. Like we have JFK and all of that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that like this one is so much smarter, or at least expects their audience to be smarter. And maybe that is because it was more like produced closer to the time period and when it's set. But like even when Forrest has too many Dr. Peppers and needs to go to the bathroom, and we have that like little picture of like a signed image of Marilyn Monroe. And that's just like enough of a nod to that whole incident without spelling it out versus Unfrosted, where they're like, I'm in hot water because Marilyn sang me happy birthday, which is just
Hmm.
like it's so much of like leading the audience one thing, which I think is just not as rewarding of a viewing experience. Because I think it's much more interesting when they just kind of drop things in there, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't.
Hmm.
And that's totally fine. So I really liked that, and I also liked the idea. I mean, I definitely did think that that was how Watergate happened. I think it
Hmm.
did give me on that one. I was like, yeah, it's because of the flashlights, and a guy called it in because he couldn't sleep. So on that front, maybe it ruined history a little bit for me, but I also do like compared to Oppenheimer, which is also kind of like a more of a behemoth of a movie. This one I felt like it was really nicely kind of broken up in time periods
Mhm.
um, via the historical incident so that you kind of had an understanding of like, okay, this was what was happening when JFK was killed. This was what was happening when John Lennon was killed. So it kind of categorized some of the information for me a little bit more, which also made me wonder, like, how long has this lady been a bus driver? Because she
I
seems to have
know.
been a bus driver for like 40 years. And I also like I thought it was interesting, like, there's that little nod to like Apple,
Mhm.
that he's like has shares of Apple, which is like that was a big prominent thing 30 years ago. So it like was kind of interesting, like now today of like how much of a staple Apple is in like all of our lives,
Mhm.
which was really interesting. I also think it is fun that like, so much from the movie was like created in our daily world. Like we have the Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. And I also like live in the DC area. So after they did the Forrest Gump movie, they actually made that reflecting pool that Forrest runs to with Jenny, which is really cool that they have that from the movie. So it just really kind of gets to the influence of it all. Um, I have other things to say, but you go.
Yeah, for sure. I really love Lieutenant Dan's character.
Right.
I know that I am maturing in age because I was like, Lieutenant Dan is hot in this movie. Like he could get it.
Wait, but
Like
which one? Like which at what era? The
at what
long hair
era?
or
Um,
the at the wedding or the
no,
first?
more so dirty and long haired.
Okay.
Like
That is one of
and
my favorite
military.
moments of like him. He's
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think Mama Gump does stand up for Forrest of like you don't listen to anybody else and what they say about you. I think Jenny is more just kind of like run away,
Mm-hmm.
which also kind of gets to like how she deals with her own trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, not to like blame her for how she deals with things, but I think that moment where Lieutenant Dan is like, "Don't call him stupid," is just like really,
Mm-hmm.
really powerful. But yeah,
Yeah, I love Lieutenant Dan's
yeah.
character.
Go ahead, continue with your sexual attractions.
Well, I love his body. And like he's like hot in the military and I'm like, "Oh my God." But he's really like a good guy. Like, they show him like as a lieutenant and he clearly like cares like deeply about like the members on his like squad. And I feel like he could so easily like fall into the trope of this like um like hyper masculinity, like I'm nothing without my body, which he does a little bit, but I feel like it's more so um like a religious journey for like Lieutenant Dan. Like we see this
Mhm.
like spiritual aspect of things. He obviously has like lost agency. He can't get around as easily. This is something that is so traumatic and would be traumatic for anyone. And I think that a lot of people that have undergone like limb loss talk about struggling with their faith, even if they weren't particularly like religious before. But with Dan, we have this like added factor of like his faith being tied to the fact that he thought he should have died because everyone in his family has died in battle in like an honorable way. And I think that like his limb loss is also like intricately tied to his sense of purpose in life and feeling like Forrest himself was the person that like took away his life's purpose and his life's meaning. And even though he's like been through all of that, he has like a dear friendship with him. And it's like the sweetest, like most pure
Mhm.
friendship. And like he clearly has this anger that's like misdirected to Forrest. And we finally see him like my favorite part of the movie is when like I love the ending scene with Forrest like finding out he has a son, but my like other favorite is when Lieutenant Dan says that if, Forrest ever becomes a shrimp boat captain, like he'll be there. And we think that he's being like sarcastic and nasty and like is underestimating Forrest's ability, which he is, but he's also such a good guy because he shows up. And I
Mm.
feel like this movie, in some sense, makes me like happy at the fact that we will have like loved ones in our lives that will like come and go. But like if we're destined to like meet them again, like in whatever several years, like we'll meet back up. Like they didn't even have like text messages or Facebook, like they somehow were connecting over like all these years. Same thing with him and Jenny. But Lieutenant Dan is a man that is true to his word basically, and he shows up. And I love when he realizes that he's like made peace with God, and he's also made peace with Forrest, and he's like, I just realized that I never said thank you for saving my life. And
Mhm.
it's so sweet. I'm gonna start crying. And then of course we see that like Lieutenant Dan was so like deep in a depression, and thought that he had no purpose. Like imagine that you think that your only purpose is to die like in battle.
Mm.
Like there's
Mhm.
nothing after that. Like going into the war believing that that is going to end there, and how hard it must be to like envision a future when you didn't think that you had one. But he struggles for like a long time, but he finally does it, and we see that he has like a beautiful fiance. And I'm sure that having like massive amounts of wealth also gave him like access to things like having like a titanium plate, whatever, that other people that have experienced that and unfortunately do not have the privilege of having like access to money would not have. But I think that he would honestly be doing just as okay and would have a fiance even if he didn't have access to the prosthetic limbs, but because he's made that like emotional journey more so
Mhm.
than the physical one. But yeah, just beautiful, beautiful. And that's what I'm saying. Like these side characters, we get like such like crazy, like intricate stories, and we really only see what we see through Force's like perspective. But yeah, I love Lieutenant Dan, and he's hot as fuck. But yeah,
Um,
any other last thoughts before we jump into remakes?
I also would also say that I do like the Barbie quality of Forrest Gump. I feel like he's just like kind of jumping into things. I feel like he is the male Barbie, in a way. Like I think like something that I would teach my kids is like when you're writing a character, make sure that they are like working for and have ambition and they're like trying to reach their goals. Because then it will be more rewarding when they actually do it. But I think just like the sheer amount and like the absurdity of how much Forrest achieves by like not
Mhm.
trying to is just like part of I think what makes this movie so charming. I also wanted to say, what a hold that Haley Joel Osment like had on
Mhm.
on the world. I don't think there was another child in America.
Yeah, for
Um,
a long time, I feel like there were like, let's say like starting late 90s into 2010s, and like Abigail Breslin was like the only female child. Is that her
mm,
name? Yeah, that was like the only female child there. There
yeah,
were a couple that really just like had
like Lindsay
Hollywood.
Lohan. Um,
Yeah, there were some that just
every single person that was in Cheaper by the Dozen is when they all they all converged.
yeah. Um, but yeah, let's see. Oh, and it's, like all of Forrest's abilities are like relying on the fact that he's very physically like fit and
Yeah.
able. Like he which is interesting
Hell
because
yeah.
we start out the movie with him having an intellectual disability and then also having a physical disability
Yeah,
needing
that's never really like
braces.
that's what I was wondering. Like when he's running, I was like, is this doctor approved? Is his back better?
Probably not, but I guess like it all worked out. But how sad to think that like if he was not physically as fit, it would be like a totally different story. Um, but yeah, did any last thoughts before we jump into remakes or Who's Your Daddy?
Um, just like, did you know that there was supposed to be a second one?
Oh, really? Like a follow-up?
Yeah. Yeah, like the guy, because it's based on a novel, which like I don't know anyone who's ever read that book. I definitely
Mm-mm.
haven't. But this guy wrote another one called Gump and Co. And I guess they were in the makes of
Oh,
like creating another one and they never did.
Well, maybe we'll get back into it
Mhm.
and we can de-age Tom Hanks' face. Any nepo babies?
Yeah, but it's really sad. Um, so the only one really is Sally Field, which is a sad story. So her mom was Margaret Field, who is also known as Maggie Mahoney. So she's known for like her sci-fi work in The Man from Planet X and Captive Women. So Field's parents originally divorced when she was 4, and her mom ended up remarrying Jock Mahoney 2 years later, who was an actor and a stuntsman, and he was in like The Range Rider, Yancey, Derringer, Tarzan, etc. Unfortunately, Sally Field did like put out a book in 2018 that Jock Mahoney did sexually abuse her like her entire
Mm.
childhood. So not like a happy Nepo story there. But yeah,
Aw.
that's all we have.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the remakes.
Hmm.
Okay, so first, easy one, title change. I just want you to imagine Forrest Fire Gump. Um, and I think we could go multiple ways with this concept. We could either have Forrest unintentionally starting a forest fire, or we could go like the Smokey Bear way and
For
have
some reason,
him
I wasn't getting the joke, and I was like, "What is fire gump? Am I supposed to understand what that?"
Forest Fire Gump.
Okay, got it. We're
Um,
on board.
we could have him do the Smokey Bear, be like a PSA, like he loves the woods. He wants you to have a fun time, but don't light stuff on fire. Don't do baby gender reveals anywhere near, dry wood. So that's an option. And I think that Forrest,
Yeah,
loves the
thank
environment.
God that Forrest Jr.'s gender was, like, all figured out by the
Yeah,
time he
he
came
was
in.
already like 3 years old, so we were all set. Okay, and then the second one, as we were just talking about, Haley Joel Osment is, the king of child actors, and another very popular movie around this same time period was The Sixth Sense. By M. Night Shyamalan, one of my favorite directors. And if you don't know the premise of that one, Haley Joel Osment is the main character, and he is able to see dead people. And I just really, really want the film to end with, them on the bus, and he's like, okay, you're going off to school, you can do it. And then, he's like, bye, mom. Like he waves to mom or something. And Forrest is like, what? Like Forrest, I don't think has like the capability of understanding that his son is seeing ghosts. So Forrest is just like, I talked to your mom too. And I just want little Haley Joel Osment to be like, I see dead people, and then it's the crossover that literally
Mhm.
everyone was asking for.
Yeah, Bubba's there too.
Bubba's there. He sees everyone. He sees Lieutenant Dan's legs. That's a bit mean. Uh, but yeah, he sees all the lost loved ones and loved limbs. And then of course there's the famous sequence where he like wipes his face on the t-shirt and comes up with like the Walmart smiley face logo. I want to set this in like a more contemporary era. So I feel like he should be like, running, and he gets handed a t-shirt, and I just want to see like the Duolingo like owl logo or something. Like I just want him to come up with more characters, see what his face can replicate. So that's a potential idea. And then stick with me here. This is a theory. So just like, in general themes here, we have two people, Mama and Forrest, and then Forrest and Forrest Jr. They, by different circumstances, are living that, single parent life. And we talk a lot about like destiny in this movie. What if Mama Gump's story is like identical to Forrest's story? Like, what if she is the Jenny? And what if Forrest's dad was also like intellectually disabled?
And then he
And
went on
that's
vacation.
and then he went on vacation. He went for a run and just like never came back. He just kept on
Wow.
running. And maybe that's, Mama Gump's story.
That's
Um,
Forrest Jr.'s fate.
and that's Forrest Jr. will either be a single dad or he will leave his wife and child to be a single parent.
I feel like
Um,
Mama Gump, like, instead of just like a boarding house, she's like accidentally created like the Hilton Hotel company.
yeah, that would be good. She's like a Holiday Inn.
Mhm.
I like it. Um, and then another one is like, like I said, a lot of these bits and a lot of Forrest's like abilities are because he is like really good at running. And, in Greenbow, Alabama, what if instead of, finding out that he has this talent, what if he was like indoors and they had a treadmill?
Hmm.
Because then I think none of the rest of the events of this film would have happened. Like he wouldn't have been discovered on the football field. Like
Yeah, it's all through bullying.
it's all through bullying. Like he would still be bullied on his way home from school, but Jenny would be like, "Run, Forrest, run," and he would run right
Yeah,
to the
what if he was just
treadmill.
cyberbullied? What is he gonna
he
do?
he I don't know, he's gonna log off.
Mhm.
And then the last one, we talked about potentials for a sequel, but I would like to, just do a reimagining of, how people have set like we didn't start the fire to like contemporary things that have happened from like 2000s on, and what that would look like from a Forrest Gump point of view. So unfortunately, I think that it would be, I want to see Forrest at January 6th. I think he might storm the Capitol. And I
But
think
on
the red
accident, he
hat,
was just like,
yeah,
"Oh,
of
we're just all
course.
going in." Yeah,
No,
he does
he
have the
has the
Trump
red
supporter
hat,
hat.
and unfortunately, I think it would be a Make America Great Again hat. And that's why he would get accidentally mistaken, because he'd be in his signature fit, the blue checkered, the red hat, all American boy, and he would be again just in DC, reliving his life with Jenny, and he would be, doing a tour, and it would be January 6th, 2021. And he would be like, "Oh, what's this crowd?" And then we would like superimpose him onto like the video footage that we have. And they'd be like, "Oh, red hat, MAGA hat, you're with us." And then we see Forrest just kind of like wandering around looking at it. And then later his trial as he is arrested and sent to jail. But I think we can prove him innocent. They get on the CCTV footage and zoom in on his hat, and it's just a Bubba Gump shrimp hat, and he's proven innocent.
I
But yeah,
do
I
think that
think
like he would have accidentally joined in the group that was like trying to get into Area 51. Do you remember when that happened? And I feel like if anyone's gonna get into Area 51, it's him on accident.
yeah, it's him on accident. He
He's
he
like,
just
I just
starts
saw a door
running.
open.
Yeah, he just starts
And
running,
it
the
was
door's
hot out here,
open.
so I went, there's AC.
Yeah, but he would meet President Trump. He would meet, Obama, Biden,
Hmm.
maybe.
He could
And
go to the Olympics this year.
he could. There's so much untapped potential
Hmm.
for reimagining of Forrest Gump. But yeah, and also side note, like I feel like you can see a little bit of the film's outdatedness in the like CGI technology that they have to superimpose him, which when I was a kid, I was like, wow, this is seamless. But now looking at it, it's mainly in like when they take the historical like recordings of the presidents and have them say like something else, and like their mouths are like that's what their mouths look like they're just like going up and down. And I feel like, AI is kind of a weird thing and a bad thing, but I feel like an average TikTok user could use like an AI app, the ones that like do the like you can put anyone's face on it, and we could have like a better filming of those particular sequences
Yeah.
now by just an
Remastered.
average yeah, remastered by an average TikTok person than the technology that was available in 94. But yeah, what about you? What are your remakes?
Um, so the first one I have is just like I think some of the charm of the movie is like Forrest Gump's positivity and just kind of going from place to place. But imagine a darker movie that's a little bit more negative in tone. And it's called Forrest Grump. And so his mom's like, Forrest, life's like a box of chocolates. Sometimes you get a gross raspberry one and you just have to fucking live with it. And then like, he wipes his face off and it's like a frowny emoticon kind of
Mm.
thing. So I think it would just be interesting if he just kind of went through life with like, I'm in the war and now I'm gonna die, kind of thing. And it's a little bit more Oppenheimer in that way. So that was one. And I also think thinking about like kind of making it in today, I think Forrest Gump, because of that, like I only use that like paddle light or the ping pong light or whatever paddle.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would be a good influencer, but I think he would
Mm-hmm.
like accidentally do like, I don't know, Timu or something that like is not as trustworthy. Um, I think he also would like at the last minute of like the auction or whatever, and he would block Elon Musk and he would buy Twitter. I do like
He
that
can afford
idea.
it.
Yeah, right. And he's like, because I can buy it because Lieutenant Dan said we don't need to worry about money anymore. Um, I also do like the idea that like it's a because Forrest Gump has that Apple share, and so I guess he's like a shareholder, and maybe he is a prominent shareholder. So he would be invited to like a shareholder meeting, and they're like, okay, we have this new kind of like texting thing. We want to make it a little bit more fun and innovative, and Forrest isn't really contributing anything, but then someone spills coffee on him and they're like, I'm so sorry, sir. Let me get you a towel. He wipes his face, and out is like the little salsa girl on the
Mm.
towel. And then he wipes it again, and it's like the two little twins in the leotard with like the ears. And they're
Uh-huh.
like, oh my God, he's created emojis. And I like the lore that like with every single iOS update where we get more emojis, it's just like a bunch of spilling coffee on Forrest Gump and seeing what comes out. Um, yeah, I don't know if you would get kind of like graphic designer cred for that, but and the last one is so everything is the same, and he meets Bubba Gump, or not Bubba Gump. He just meets I mean, I guess that's their ship name. But he meets Bubba on the bus, and Bubba's like, "Do you know anything about animatronic animals?" And he's like, "No, not really." He's like, "My family has worked in animatronic animals all the time." And he's like, "When I get out of here after this draft, I'm gonna make a whole restaurant about and that has animatronic animals that's going to rain inside the restaurant on the hour. When you go on your birthday, you're going to get like a little volcano cake, and the film is Rainforest Gump, and they actually create the Rainforest
Do you think
Cafe.
it's like inspired by their time in the Vietnam jungle?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and from the time, like, you know how it like downpours and doesn't stop raining for like 3 months in a row?
Mhm.
That's why. That's the inspiration.
It actually becomes exposure therapy for
Yeah, they're
PTSD.
like, we're gonna slowly reintroduce the concept of rain and thunder sounds. And they're like, without, oh my God, they're
Mhm.
like, instead of guerrilla warfare, just gorillas. I
Oh my God, perfect.
love it.
Yeah. So I think
I
it
think
could
we
be
have a movie
something.
there.
So Brooke, what have you been watching lately?
Not a ton since we last talked. Let me see. I watched A Quiet Place Day One, which has Joseph Quinn, who is Marriya's boyfriend and lover, and Lupita Nyong'o. And I really loved it. There was like I don't want to say there's like a twist aspect to this about Lupita's character that was not at all like advertised in the
Oh, I've seen
trailers.
the spoilers.
Oh, okay. So spoiler alert. So all the previous like Quiet Place films, I think this is the first one that's not like directly um like has anything to do with John Krasinski. Like he did the first
Mm.
two.
They met him? But then he didn't direct it.
Yeah, he didn't direct it, and I
You
think
guys kind of passed the baton.
yeah, and I think this the script and the conception were loosely discussed with the new director. So I think he has some like writing creds, but I think mostly this was, you know, taking the world that John Krasinski had built with his you know, first two films and kind of going in a different direction with it. And it's a much more like emotional direction. So, you know, you see obviously the action of this, and I was very hyped because I love like day one apocalypse stuff. Like I love beginning of apocalypse. And I love to see like the chaos first ensuing. And I think it because it usually has people um like, you know, more so in that immediate danger and trying to figure out what's going on, trying to come up with plans. So I love like that early apocalypse stuff. And I watch like so many apocalypse movies that like it's like kind of its own kind of genre within it. And Quiet Place, the original one takes place on like day 471 or something. Like it takes place like a year, maybe even more after the initial one. So they were like, we're gonna take you back to the to day one. Obviously, it's the title of the film. And I thought it was just gonna be action, but really the big spoiler here is that Lupita's character is a terminal cancer patient and she has stage 4 like cancer. She's in hospice care and her like whole story is that she's going to die like imminently. Like this is not a story of survival. Like she was going to die very shortly, whether or not the apocalypse happened to be occurring in the background. So she forms this like honestly really sweet friendship with Joseph Quinn. And I thought that
I
he
did read that his story is that he's just hot. That's what I
he's
had
just
read, that
hot.
that's his whole thing.
Oh, I mean,
Lupita's
no.
dying and he's just hot.
Oh, no, he has like a lot of emotional depth.
No, I know.
Oh,
That
oh,
was
okay.
it.
That was you're joking. He is
Yeah.
hot, but he's not just hot in this film. But I thought, you know, he seems like such a sweetie. And he was giving like full sweetie vibes. They let him keep his British accent in this one. So yeah,
It was for the girls.
it was. They said this is for the girls and the gays only. But yeah, so he was really sweet. Honestly, like a lot of emotional depth. Like I really liked his performance in this. Lupita is like obviously an amazing, well-established actress. And it was just really good. So like it was like a gut punch to me when I was like, she's in hospice. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, well, this is a twist. And so it just totally changes the scope of like what their story is going to be because like I said, she's not getting out of here either way. So it much more becomes like a story of like finding humanity and finding like dignity in your final moments and instead of like struggling to survive, which she does. She's still, you know, that instinct to live is still within us even if we're in like severe pain. And you know, she's like days away from dying from cancer. Like she still is trying to survive doing all this and then kind of has like another purpose in trying to help Joseph Quinn's character. And obviously her cat, who is like an emotional support cat and is the star of the show, as Joseph Quinn said on one of the interviews. But yeah, so really liked it. Totally, totally different, like emotional turn compared to the first two movies. I would say that I liked it less, but it's kind of just like so different. Like it was kind of just like a sad, like beautiful story versus like apocalypse. So yeah, I think they did like a couple of like world building stuff with like the monsters themselves and a little bit more like monster development, and we kind of saw them like eating something for the first time and um like kind of having maybe like egg sacs or something. So my only criticism, because I am a big creature feature person, I want like more information about the monsters. This movie was like not for that, but they introduced a
Mm.
couple new elements to the point where I was like, okay, explain further. Like they showed these things but never like got into them. But yeah, I love Quiet Place. People are like really nasty about it and like to pick it apart, but I really liked it and loved this one. So I saw that
Can I
and
say something really quick?
yeah.
Because I don't really have an outlet to talk about it. Because I haven't seen the film yet, but I've really liked the press of it. And there's this that no one else will understand unless you're like so deep into the Joseph Quinn lore. But there's one hate account that is like just like a bunch of random letters and stuff. So it doesn't really matter. But basically, he has like 300 tweets of like how much he hates Joseph Quinn. And he had like a black icon and stuff, and like he was completely anonymous and just talking about how much he hates that Joseph Quinn is being cast as Johnny Storm. And then due to this like press thing, it came out yesterday. He posted this picture and he said, I zoomed in on the face. I hate lying. I agree that Joseph Quinn has a nice face. And then he started posting. He says, he has a handsome face that made my heart flutter. My feelings were swayed by the cute smile. I noticed Joseph Quinn has a great personality. I am defeated by Joseph Quinn. And now he's posting, Joseph Quinn, stop making that face. It pisses me off. Cute. It pisses me off. It pisses me off. Cute. It makes me angry. I am not defeated yet. It's been 7 hours since I was so taken aback by Joseph Quinn's acting ability. And so he's just completely converted. His icon is now Joseph Quinn, and he's been defeated.
Oh my
Um,
God. I love when a
so
hater admits that they're wrong.
And it's been such, and now everyone's like kind of making it a trend of like they're posting random pictures of Joseph Quinn and they're like, Joseph, stop making that face. Cute. Stop it. Cute.
That's
So
funny.
that's what this film has done, but please continue on what you've seen.
Love it. Yeah, honestly, it turned me to I wasn't a hater. I was just like a neutral Joseph Quinn. And I really, yeah, he was really good in this. So excited to see Gladiator, but he looks very pale and yellow and sickly in that. So I don't
Yeah.
know if I'll be
Well, he's like
getting,
an emperor.
yeah, I don't know if I'll be getting like hot emperor vibes from him,
I think
but
he's like kind of crazy. That's how
yeah.
he seems in the trailer, that he's like crazy man with guy liner.
God, later. But yeah, and then for 4th of July, I watched White House Down, which I
Oh.
actually had never seen. There was like a time period, I think like 20 like tens where there were like five different movies like Olympus Has Fallen, White House Down, like all these like attacking the White House movies. And I thought I had seen White House Down, but I had actually just seen Olympus Has Fallen like multiple times.
Oh.
Thought they were different
I've only seen
movies.
White House Up.
White House Sideways, Left,
Hmm.
Right. White House Down is a silly, silly movie. Honestly, Channing Tatum was like giving it his heart and soul. And that's like the fact that Channing Tatum was the best actor in this movie
Hmm.
is interesting. But yeah, he, honestly, I was vibing with it. I was in the 3-star range. And then Joey King is the daughter in this. And let me tell you that Joey King at the start of the film, Channing Tatum is her dad. Her dad has missed her middle school talent show where she is a flag thrower. And somehow this ties into the very end of the film where the White House has been taken over by terrorists. They have the nuclear launch codes. They're about to launch a nuclear attack on all of these like targets in the Middle East, and the remaining parts of the US government have launched an airstrike on the White House to just take everyone out, like neutralize the threat. They can't risk it. They're going to start like international war. But the people operating like the plane that's going to do the airstrike change their mind when Joey King takes an American flag and starts doing, I'm not even shitting you, she starts doing her flag twirling performance that she did for middle school. And the fighter jet people are like, well, we can't we can't bomb the White
I
House
feel like that's
now.
what I feel like that's Joey King's personality, is like she's like, I'm the shit, I'm the main character. That's kind of like her vibe in the kissing booth, and that's what I've seen as her vibe since then. And I feel like that's the moment that gave her the
Oh
audacity.
my God. And like it is just so silly. So silly. Like everything else, I just, in obviously the whole concept is silly, but everything else was at least following like logical thought patterns of what we would do, how would we react to this terrorist situation. And then the fact that the fighter like jet pilots were like, wait a minute, that was such a touching flag twirl performance. Like, there are innocent people here. We can't possibly bomb the White House. And then they changed their mind. So silly, so silly. So I watched those two movies, and then been reading a lot again. ACOTAR, absolutely love it. Totally on board. I have been basically like, I feel like a Mormon missionary. Like, this is my mission, is to spread the good word. Like, I'm like holding up books and I'm like, have you heard? Have you heard about the prophet like Sarah J.
You're a book
Moss?
influencer.
I am. And so I literally have told like 3 different coworkers. They all have ordered the books. So good. If you like ACOTAR, like, please like message me in the comments so that I have more people to talk about it with. I'm like just started the 3rd book. I'm about like 50 pages in. So I've been doing a lot of reading, and then I also watched a few episodes of the American Horror Stories season 2. Same like creators of American Horror Story, but each episode is about 40 minutes and is like its own separate story. Some of them are like background stories to the full seasons. Some of them are just their own thing. Some of them are good, some of them are really weird. I just watched one yesterday that was like actually like a true story of how smallpox was like the cure for smallpox was found. And I guess it was
Hmm.
like milkmaids would have like boils on their hands, but they never got sick to the point of like getting sick and not recovering and dying. And it's because cowpox, which is like similar but different, is like a protective factor against smallpox. So some guy literally like shoved a needle into a milkmaid's hand, into her pus-filled boil, and like took it and like fed it or like inoculated it, gave it to like orphan children, which I love that we always like experiment on orphan children. And that's literally how the cure for
Poor
smallpox.
Annie.
Yeah, little orphan Annie with her little red head, she was getting filled with pus-filled boils from a milkmaid.
Maybe I won't die tomorrow.
So
Maybe I'll survive the night for
yeah,
tomorrow.
Annie was all set. But apparently that's the true story of how it happened. And then this American Horror Stories episode like was building off of that, but in like such a weird fucking way. Like, the milkmaids were
Mhm.
lesbians. One of them was a witch. One of them thought that she was a child of Lazarus. The other people in the town were all dying from smallpox, so they thought that they needed to dig up the bodies and eat the hearts of the people. Maybe that has like its basis in a historical element too. I wouldn't put it past people in like the 1700s or whatever time period this was. But it was just weird. Like, it was not a good episode. So I don't know. Some of them are really good. Some of them are really weird and off-putting, but like not even in a fun way. So yeah, that's everything I've been watching. What about you, Marriya?
Thank you for asking, Brooke. Um, I watched all of Insatiable, because I've been in a very emotionally, bad place, so I just wanted to watch something that was going to be trash. And it was like not in like a bad way necessarily, because like there was the whole thing about like the body positivity and stuff that I was like a little bit worried about where, the story is about this girl who like loses a bunch of weight just because her jaw is like locked for a few months or a few weeks while she's like healing from being punched in the face and stuff. Um, but and it is very like soap opera-y. But there are like some elements that like really hit hard. Like there's like this one scene about like being mixed race and like not belonging to any community that like I started crying and then I rewatched it like 3 times. And then I tried to contact the writer and she never responded, but that's okay because hopefully she knows. So it was like absolute like a train wreck, but like in a fun way, like kind of like reality TV, kind of like trashy kind of vibes. So I liked that. It's like obviously not something to like be taken seriously, which is cool. But the woman who plays the main character's mom, Sarah Colonna, her great uncle was Jerry Colonna, who was famous for working with Bob Hope. He also voiced the March Hare in Alice in Wonderland. Alyssa Milano is also in this, and she is the daughter of fashion designer and talent manager Lynn Milano and film music editor Thomas Milano, although it seems like her babysitter like randomly got her into acting without her parents' permission. And then so then I finished that. So then now I've just been kind of like testing other TV shows. So I watched one episode of The Bear,
Mm,
which was like I kind of don't entirely understand what it's about because I've only seen one episode and it was like very fast paced because it's like in a kitchen, so everyone's just kind of like fighting, and then I didn't really find the story yet, but maybe I just need to stick with it. From what I understand, it's like the avatar of the kitchen, where it's like the same kind of thing where like this brother has been doing his own thing and then his brother dies and now he has to leave that thing behind and take on this new
mm,
role, like an avatar that his brother's like a scientist, so he leaves, I guess, the military or whatever to
mhm.
be take his place in the avatar. And that's what happens in The Bear. This guy's like
Oh.
a famous chef, and then his brother, who's managing this like local restaurant, dies, so he tries to bring his like culinary arts there and take over his brother's role. So it's just like the avatar of the kitchen. Um, but Abby Elliott is in it, who plays the main character's sister, and she's the daughter of Paula Neidert, who is a talent coordinator, and Chris Elliott is her father, who's been in like a lot of stuff, but I know him best as Roland in Schitt's Creek. And then her grandfather was also a radio comedian, Bob Elliott. So I tried that one. I might go back to that one. We also watched Sugar on Apple TV, which I thought was really not good. It's just like the cinematography is just kind of all over. It's kind of like shaky cam, but it's not like Hunger Games where it kind of like fits that vibe. It's
Mhm.
just like kind of random how shaky it is. Um, and um, it's basically about this guy who like is like a private investigator, but his only job is to like find people who are missing. That's like all he does. Um, and it has like Colin Farrell. And then I don't know, are you going to read or are you going to watch Sugar? Okay, cool. So we read ahead, and I guess like randomly in like the sixth episode, it's revealed because I guess in the first episode they do talk about like, oh, he's like weird because he can't get drunk, like he has this like intolerance to alcohol. But there's not really anything else talked about. But I guess in the sixth episode, it's randomly revealed that he's an alien. So I don't know. I don't know. It feels very kind of gimmicky,
Mhm.
that you would sit with a show for that long and then just randomly have that reveal. And I'm not like obviously like a big sci-fi person, so it just wasn't the best to begin with. But Colin Farrell, I learned a lot about his random kind of background. So his father played football for an Irish professional football club, Shamrock Rovers, which his uncle also played for. Colin got into football in a team that was managed by his father, and he eventually got into acting. But while traveling in Sydney at the age of 18, he actually became a suspect of an attempted murder case, because the police sketch looked remarkably close to him.
Mhm.
Um, and he had even described that he had blacked out during that night, so he wasn't entirely sure that he had an alibi. So they had to find this friend that he was with. Luckily had a journal, I guess, and they were taking like ecstasy
Mhm.
on the other side of town that night.
Hell yeah.
And then the other one that we tried out was Presumed Innocent, which has Jake Gyllenhaal. It was like a book and it also was a movie, so they're kind of like remaking it as a show. And it also has like the weirdest cinematography. I don't know what it is. I think that one also was Apple TV, but it's like this weird kind of thing where like they show Jake Gyllenhaal as like a close up and then they suddenly like see him from like beyond the neighbor's gate or something. Like it's just like random shots of like close up and then far away and then like behind some trees where it's like, is this even like the same moment? So I really don't like the cinematography personally. But it's all about like this lawyer that he was involved with at one point ends up like murdered. And they think it was because it was so in the way that um, this case that she had tried, this guy used to murder people. And so they're like, oh, maybe we got it wrong. Maybe we put the wrong guy in prison and now he's showing us that we made a mistake. But it's like if you like weren't charged for a murder that you committed, why would you kill the main lawyer and show everyone you got it wrong? I'm
Mhm.
still out here. I don't know. Just quit while you're ahead would be
Mhm.
the way that I would do it. But Jake Gyllenhaal obviously is a big Nepo baby. So he's the son of director Stephen Gyllenhaal and screenwriter Naomi Foner, and the younger brother of Maggie Gyllenhaal, who's married to Peter Sarsgaard, who is also in this show. And he's also the godson of Jamie Lee Curtis, Paul Newman, who's obviously the actor and the salad dressing connoisseur, and the cinematographer Robert Elsett, who like he won an Oscar for like There Will Be Blood and other things. So that's been good. And then my favorite show, one of my favorite shows is back, and I've been watching it because it's trashy. The Mole
Mhm.
on Netflix is one of my favorite shows ever, where it's just like a bunch of random people are competing to earn money for their pot, and only one person can win it at the end, but they're constantly competing against one person in their group is the mole and is constantly sabotaging them from like trying to get more money or kind of taking money out. And so
Mhm.
they all have to like guess who the mole is, and whoever is like the most wrong on the mole quiz goes home each week or each episode. And I don't know, I just love it. I don't know. It's like it's just all little like obstacle courses. And I
Mhm.
don't know, it's really good. I like it. And they don't have all the episodes out yet, and I was really bummed about it. But then I found the Reddit thread where now everyone's just like questioning who it is. I have my own theories, they have their own theories. So I don't know. I don't know. But that's been really fun. Like one guy is like an undercover cop. Another woman has like done a documentary for Netflix. So like maybe she's like the one who's been picked by executives. So I don't know. I don't know.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. Well, they cannot find me on social media because I don't have public social media. But Marriya, where can they find you and the pod?
You can find me at Marriya Schwarz on all social media and at Remake Hot Take on all social media. And I have tried to post everywhere, but I forgot that threads existed for like a few days. And now I'm posting on Facebook, and one person is
Ooh.
liking them. So thank you, sir.
All righty. Well, run, Forrest, run.
Run, Forrest, run.
Run, Forrest, run. Jenny and
That was
me,
good.
we was like peas and carrots. Lieutenant
Ooh,
Dan.
ooh, give them all.
That's everything I have in my arsenal. All
Yay.
right. Bye.
Bye.